Hey, this is Brett with the Epic Bike Shop, and I'm going to talk a little bit about prepping your bike for the spring. So the first thing we want to do is thoroughly clean the bike. You can clean the frame and the seat and the wheels and everything just with soapy water and a washcloth or a soft brush. We also want to make sure that we're thoroughly cleaning the drivetrain here, so the freewheel, the chain, and the cranks up here, chain rings. So to do that, we want to use a liquid or a spray degreaser, and I would just put it on a stiff brush like this and go along and scrub. I'm not using any right now because I don't want to get it on the grass and make a spot, but basically you want to scrub all of your drivetrain components until everything is free of grease. So now that our bike is thoroughly cleaned and degreased, we want to re-lubricate the drivetrain. So that's going to help protect the chain and give it a longer life, and it's also going to help aid in our shifting. So I'm just going to take a wet bike lubricant and apply a generous amount to the chain as I spin it, and we'll go from there. Once I have an adequate amount of lubricant on the chain, what I want to do is cycle through the gears and make sure that I'm coating all of the sprockets in the back and the chain rings in the front with oil. Now we're going to check a couple things on our wheels. So one thing to look for is cracking in the tire. You can have a bunch of cracks next to each other, or long cracks running down the tire. Cracking can happen from age or exposure. So if you have major cracking in your tires, it's probably a good time to replace them. Another thing we can do is feel the tension in our spokes. Just grab two and squeeze together. And we're looking for even tension all the way around the tire. No spokes that are significantly loose compared to the others. And these are feeling pretty good. If you do have loose spokes, you can take your bike to a local bike shop and they will get you figured out. So now we can move on to the brakes. Okay, let's talk a little bit about brakes. This is a disc brake bike, so our main components are our brake body up here, which houses the brake pads that squeeze the rotor, and the rotor, which runs around, it's attached to the wheel, and it gets squeezed and stopped by the brake pads. So a couple things to look for when we're doing a spring checkup is check out our rotor. Make sure that there's no corrosion or anything. Make sure that there's no waviness to it or obvious bends in the rotor. As I spin the tire, I'm listening for any rubbing that I might hear between the brake pads and the rotor. I'm not hearing any right now, but if I was, if it's a constant rubbing, I would want to adjust the position of my brake to hopefully align it better so the rubbing stops. If I adjust my brake from side to side and I can't get it to a spot where there's no rubbing, or it's just rubbing in one spot, that's a good indication that you might have a bent rotor. So one way you can unbend your rotor is go around, find where it's bent or find where it's rubbing the most. That's the spot where it's bent, and then you would take that bent spot and you can use a crescent wrench. There's specific tools made for this, but you can take your crescent wrench and bend your rotor to one side or the other until it's back to true and it can pass through without making any noise. Okay, so I've removed our rear wheel here, and another good thing to check while we're here is the status of the brake pads. So we want to make sure that they're not getting worn down too thin. So like I said, I took the tire off, I undid this little pin here that holds the pad in place. So I'll put that off to the side, and then I'm going to take out this set of pads. So the pads will come out. I'll grab one of them. This is what you're looking for. You can see that there's plenty of thickness left on this pad. You want to replace once they get around 1 millimeter of thickness in the pad left, but as you can hopefully see, this pad still has a lot of life left in it. So the last thing we'll talk about with brakes is just the tension of our brake levers and the overall performance of the brake. So just something to look for with your brake levers. You don't want to be pulling them and having the lever go all the way to the handle. That can limit your overall braking potential. So you want it to stop about there, if not a little farther out. So to adjust the lever pull, you can screw out this barrel adjuster here. I'm screwing clockwise right now, and then lock down the little keeper there. And that way I have a nice firm brake pull, and I can check it by getting my back wheel spinning. And I know that it's locking up right away and the brake feels good.